Sonny Boy is a 2021 isekai anime released by Studio Madhouse. It branded itself as a brand new, more mature and complex take on the ever so popular isekai genre, which is defined by a character or a group of characters getting transported from our world to a different one. Today, the show is often discussed in anime fan circles as a series that is very hard to understand. That is due to two different things. The first are the nonsensical, almost surreal environments that our characters have to traverse. And the second are the show's primary themes, which are hidden behind a lot of subtle metaphors that many fans noticed but weren't able to decode. When we take these two things into account, as well as the target audience, it makes sense that the filmmakers here decided to make most episodes almost completely chronological, bar a few flashbacks. Forcing the viewer to not only decode the sometimes hard to understand metaphors, but also try and piece together the timeline of the story might be a bit too much for the average anime viewer. However, there is one episode that still attempts to do just that, while still retaining the abstract environments and metaphors that the show is known for. It is because of this that it's able to not only stand out from the rest of the episodes by pushing the abstract and surreal vibe to its extreme, but also communicate one of the most tragic stories told in the show. How does this episode manage to do all that, while still remaining comprehensible? Difficult enough to still make the viewer think, but not difficult enough to overwhelm them. Today I will be analyzing Keiichiro Saito's masterpiece, Episode 8 of Sonny Boy, Laughing Dog. First, let's look at the structure of the episode's timeline. In this episode, we see Yamabiko tell the story of how he became a dog to Nagara and Mizuho while they're traversing an unknown world. As such, most of the episode is told in flashbacks. This already gives us a story inside a story structure that is atypical for the show. Now, for the purposes of this video essay, I tried segmenting the episode into different segments, with each one ending after there was a significant jump in time in the story. I numbered them based on the order that they appear in, and then I tried to reorder them chronologically, which ended up looking like this. Now, keep in mind, the story and a story format I already talked about. Notice how normally, with this format, we'd expect two chronological timelines to emerge. Here, we only see one. The timeline in the present has the numbers of the segments constantly increasing. In the flashback timeline, however, we often see the order of the numbers increase for a bit before skipping back once in a while. This is a relatively complex timeline structure, especially for this show. How does it manage to remain comprehensible then? And why is it specifically this episode that is structured this way? In my opinion, there are a few reasons. The first has to do with this batch of segments. All of these are scenes that are shown to us very early. That is because the show chooses to first give us a very condensed version of the story, before diving deeper into it. This way, the viewer has an easier time reconstructing the timeline, because he already knows the order of all the events. The next reason I figured out while trying to recreate the timeline shown in this video, the episode works with two very noticeable and changing visual motifs. The first of them being Yamabiko, who starts off the story as a human, but turns into a dog around the first third, which is shown to us very early in the condensed version of the story we're presented first. Thanks to this, the viewer knows that if Yamabiko is a human, we're at the start of the story. But if he's a dog, then we're past the first third. Coincidentally, the second motif is a disease that infects the characters around the time that Yamabiko becomes a dog. The disease manifests itself as constantly growing red crystals that appear on the person. Because the growth of these red crystals is roughly the same for all characters, the viewer can easily tell where on the timeline he is based on the size of these tumors. This is, in my opinion, the main reason why no other episode attempts to tell its plot this way, because they lack a clear, constantly escalating visual motif like this one, that allows the viewer to orient themselves on the timeline very well. And, if all else fails, it is still framed using the easy to understand timeline in the present. Even though I did just explain how the episode manages to still be comprehensible despite the very complicated structure of the plot, it is still a pretty challenging episode to try and understand when compared to the rest of the show. Just not as much as one would believe when presented with this. but it is because of its complexity that the fans have grown to love it. It's one of the later episodes of the show, and most of the viewers that have made it this far into it have probably grown to appreciate it for its more complex nature and don't really mind the challenge that episode 8 brings. On many reviewing sites, it sits as the second highest rated episode of the show, only falling behind its finale. And I really don't think that it would work as well if the episode was placed earlier into the show.